The Nameless House and the Fall of a Fascinated Man. Chapter 1, Rebellion. In that forgotten northwestern town of Raven Cliff, there is a restaurant that is only open at night, the Nameless House. There are no signs, no advertisements, but there are always people who come uninvited. The proprietress of this restaurant calls herself Yoon Seon-ju. She is unassumingly beautiful, her voice is like dead wood on a frosty night, but her eyes hide the deepest mockery and exhaustion in the world. No one knows that she came from a brain-dead romance novel a few years ago, Rippling in the Sea, 99 Loves of the Heroine's Heartthrob. And she was the most hated villain female teacher in the book, Chi-Yu. She made things difficult for the heroine in every way, pointed fingers at the trio, and was finally spurned by 10,000 people, deprived of her alchemist qualifications, and finally collapsed on the street, her eyes burned to blood and tears. Luckily, she entered the book very early when she was still a student at the Academy of Alchemy. She worked frantically to be admitted to the top star Alchemy Tower Academy, and after graduation, she refused the solicitation of powerful people from all over the world, and ran to this small town that was never mentioned in the original book to be incognito. She doesn't touch alchemy, she only cooks. She tried to escape fate, and it ended up finding her door. Chapter 2, The White-Haired Boy and the First Coincidence. Late that night, a weary traveler knocked on the door of the Nameless Pavilion. He was dressed in a tattered grey cloak, his white hair was as messy as withered silk, his eyes were pale, and his voice was as thin as the chirping of cicadas. Please. Give me some hot water. Yoon Seon-ju frowned, it's not a normal person who comes to the restaurant to order hot water. He shook his head, I can help with the dishes. I don't steal or steal, I just hide from someone. He looked about 16 years old, but his spine was slightly curved, like a child who had been tormented countless times by a harsh fate. Name? He said his name was Sui Sui. This stroke is enough to scare people to death, and it is exactly the same as the original male partner who is cold-blooded, decisive in killing, and only acts according to the orders of the heroine in her memory. She quietly made a pot of diced rabbit with green peppers, and when she handed it to him, she asked, "Where are you from?" He hesitated for a moment, Luoyingguo, a historical town in the north. I escaped from the fire. That was the starting point of the bloody case of 10,000 ghosts walking in the night in the original book. Her heart chuckled, and the corners of her mouth still smiled, it's a coincidence. Chapter 3, The Hollow Girl and the Second Coincidence. 2 months later, a bizarre murder shocks the town. The deceased was a tavern owner whose flesh and blood were charred but not burned by open flames. It was rumored that the deceased had offended the Raven Demon God. Yoon Seon-ju planned to pretend to be deaf and dumb, but when the store closed that night, a young girl suddenly rushed in at the door. Her eyes were hollow and her expression was sad, and she was wearing a delicate but dirty aristocratic college uniform. As soon as she saw Yoon Seon-ju, she cried loudly, "Please take me in. I can do anything, I just want to have a home." Yoon Wang-ju felt a sudden chill in his heart. Girl's name Jun Lan Hongji. The name. She won't forget. In the original book, this girl is not only a heartthrob and unparalleled in wisdom, but also the protagonist of the plot. Her smile can make the city-state decide war and peace, and her tears can convert the villain to the right path. But at this moment, his hair was scattered, his feet were bare and his skin was torn, and his whole body trembled, as if he had fallen from a tower, and there was no longer the glory of the past. Yoon Seon-ju stir-fried the vegetables expressionlessly, and asked lightly, "What will you do?" "Yes, I will set up a formation, I will help the guests mix drinks, and I will simulate dreams. I can tell people bedtime stories." She sighed, "Okay, let's wash the dishes first." Inner sneer, or is it not a coincidence? Chapter 4, The Old Man and the Third Coincidence. The restaurant gradually became popular, and many travelers from far away came to smell the fragrance. Late one night, a boy who looked to be about 50 years old and had a full beard but claimed to be only 15 walked through the door. "Boss, I want to work. I am a beautiful man, disfigured, but my soul is still beautiful." Yoon Kijua glanced at him and recognized him. The third trio member in the original book, who used to be known for his appearance, was later burned by alchemy in order to save the heroine's face, and his temperament changed greatly, becoming extremely inferior and narcissistic, named Zhen Rim. "What will you do?" "I'm good at carving, painting candy figures, detoxifying, catching fugitives, and playing clowns to make children laugh. She rolled her eyes. Okay, wipe the table first. At this point, the 3-member team has arrived. She didn't want to say it's a coincidence anymore. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 5, The Night of the Resurrection of Metalwork. One night, she dug out an ancient bottle wrapped in black cloth under the kitchen floor, and the bottle was covered with alchemy forbidden words, which was the god-level forbidden awakened blood in the original book. Yoon Soo-injo's face changed suddenly. Who put this? But he knelt down, his hands trembling, and said, this is my 2 years ago paved the way for his future. For the glory of the heartthrob, I laid the groundwork. Now, we just don't want to be the people of that story anymore. Zhen Rim sneered, what heartthrob? I just want to fry a poached egg here every day and watch the kittens and puppies. But fate has sent us to you, and perhaps you are the only one who can change it all. Yoon Wangjo was silent for a long time. She finally realized, it wasn't the fate of the original book that came to the door, it was these people who escaped by themselves. They broke free from the iron laws of the book and looked for a place where they could take in the misplaced souls. And her nameless pavilion has become a port. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 6, Broken Book, Truth and Rebirth. Late one night, a man in a black robe quietly walked into the restaurant. He handed Yoon a stale book. It's the book Rippling in the Sea, 99 Loves of the Heroine's Heartthrob. But the contents of the book have collapsed. Every page is out of order, character names are altered, paragraphs are flipped. The heroine has gone from a heartthrob to a madman who no one believes, the trio went from loyal subordinates to each with their own ghosts, and the vicious female teacher who was once spurned by thousands of people has become the only existence with self-awareness. It's... your world is crumbling. The black-robed man whispered, only you can carry the final destination of those souls. She closed her book and looked at the 3 broken people in front of her, but eager to live. They were cleaning out the kitchen, chopping vegetables, washing dishes, tasting vegetables, and bickering. They are not characters. They are people. Okay. She said lightly, from today onwards, this restaurant will be called Leaving the Library. It means leaving the library of rotten books. They all laughed. In the smoke and steam, what they cook is not rice, but fate. Chapter 7, The Forbidden Gate. With the fame of leaving the library, the town became a gathering place for passers-by. Yun's restaurant becomes a kind of bizarre sanctuary, attracting aliens from all over the world, spirits in distress, and even people from the story characters who have been played tricks on by fate. However, Yoon Kijo always felt an inexplicable oppression, as if there was a deep darkness coming from some unknown place. She's not afraid of the broken story characters, she just wants to live a peaceful life. However, she always felt that the foundation of the leaving the library was not stable, and there was always a shadow quietly spreading. One day, Xueqi whispered to Yoon Kijo, this town, I'm afraid it's not just a coincidence. Her tone was no longer frivolous, but had an unsettling heaviness. I once looked up the history of this place. Raven Cliff was once an ancient alchemical forbidden place, and it is said that it hides a door to the nameless world. That's where the alchemists sealed it away to prevent certain taboos from being opened. Yoon Soo-injo frowned. She didn't like this kind of mysterious story, and she didn't plan to turn the library into a place to break the taboo. She hopes that she can continue to live a peaceful life and live with these broken souls who are no longer characters. But, her instincts tell her that things are not that simple. That night, it was dark and the restaurant in the Nameless house was brightly lit. Suddenly, there was a heavy knock at the door. Yoon Kijo quickly sorted out the desktop while looking at Xueqi. Who? She walked to the door, a faint sense of foreboding. The door was pushed open, and a man in a black robe appeared in front of her. His face was covered by a hat, and his figure was tall and seemed to carry some invisible sense of oppression. You. The man lowered his head and said in a cold tone, Yoon Wangju. Yoon Soo-injo's heart was shocked. She had never seen this person, but she knew that this name had already been mentioned. I know you're, a chill flashed in the man's eyes, you can sense those broken fates, and even reshape them. But did you know that these characters are not meaningless? Their stories are destined to be closely linked to your fate. Yoon Kijo remained calm, but his heart became more and more vigilant. She took a slight step back and blocked the man out of the doorway. Who the hell are you? The man stroked a badge on his shirt slightly, then said slowly, I'm from the Nameless world, and I'm the overseer there. Your actions have begun to affect the order of the world. She had heard what he meant by the Nameless world. It is the forbidden realm of alchemy, which is said to contain countless unwritten destinies and undefined lives. If you enter it, everything will no longer be a story, but a reality that cannot be controlled. The door of the nameless world is forever closed. Just because once this door is opened, not only will the fate of some characters collapse, but the order of the entire world will also be broken. Yoon Soo-injo stared at the man, and suddenly her heart moved, and asked, "Then these people?" She pointed to the kitchen cooking with the kitchen cooking, "What are they?" The man's eyes darkened. "They weren't the original characters, they were created by you. It was you who saved from the original. Today, their fate has long been intertwined with yours. Their presence will directly affect the opening of the nameless world." Yoon didn't respond immediately. She turned to look at them busy in the kitchen. Each one carries the light of the past, but it is burdened with a shadow that cannot be erased. Each of them is looking for some kind of rebirth in this forgotten town. She felt an indescribable responsibility, one that seemed to come to her naturally. Chapter 3, Reboot and Choice. In the next few days, Yoon Ki-jo was still busy in the restaurant, but the worry in her heart was getting deeper and deeper. She begins to re-examine the characters who have been saved, and their fates are still quietly changing. Tsubaki is no longer so timid, and has even started to try to create new recipes in the kitchen, full of hope for the future. Zhen often discusses his future life with Xueqi at night, trying to find self-confidence and overcome the shadow of his past. As for Xueqi, her eyes are no longer empty, and she gradually begins to have a real sense of autonomy. However, all this is fraught with unease. One day, after cleaning up a table of meals, Yoon Soo-injo suddenly found an unsigned letter on the table. When she opened it, there was only one sentence written on the letter. "Choice, open the nameless door, or close it forever." These words were like a thunderclap, piercing the last trace of peace in her heart. She knows that the secrets of the nameless world are about to be revealed, and she must make a choice. She looked back at the three people behind her: Yu Chang, Zhen Wei Chang, and Xueqi. These former characters are no longer the characters in the book, they have their own lives and destinies. How exactly is she going to choose? Do you open that door and start all over again, or do you keep it closed and let this seemingly peaceful life continue? Chapter 9, The Nameless End. On a turbulent night, Yoon made a decision. She told the trio that she was going to open that door. She knew it would be a fresh beginning, but it was also a path from which there was no turning back. The lights in the restaurant suddenly dimmed, the wind became rapid, and the black-robed man reappeared, carrying an ancient scroll. "Are you ready?" he asked. Yoon Ki-jo nodded, his fingers gently stroking the runes on the scroll. In an instant, the door to the nameless world opened with a bang. The door leads to not just the story of the past, but every choice for the future. Chapter 10, The Beginning of the Nameless World. The moment the door opened, the air in the entire restaurant became extremely heavy. Countless runes swirled in the air, like time and space distorted by ancient powers, as if everything was frozen in a moment. Yoon felt a tearing force emerge from that door, a force full of chaos, conflict, and unknown. The black-robed man stood beside her, his eyes cold and his voice low. "This is the entrance to the nameless world. Every door that opens is the starting point of countless possibilities." Yoon took a deep breath and tried to calm down. She knew that this moment was an option from which she could not turn back, and that opening the door would mean entering a world of utter strangeness and full of possibilities. Perhaps, she will no longer be just the ordinary woman who cooks in the town, but will be drawn into a deeper maelstrom of intrigue and fate. She glanced back at the three behind her. Chang, Zhenji, and Recommend, these three former villains, have now become indispensable in her life. Although their past is full of shadows, they have also found their place in this world that belongs to them. She didn't want to give up on them, and she didn't want to go back to the chaos of the past. "Shall we go in?" The voice of the recommendation broke Yoon Soo-injo's contemplation. She looked at Xueqi, and a trace of complicated emotion flashed in her eyes. She knew that this door was not only an entrance to the nameless world, but it also meant that her fate and that of these people and of this time would begin anew. "Let's go in." Yoon Ki-jo nodded slightly. Yu Chang squeezed the cutlery in his hand, and his eyes were a little more determined. "No matter what lies ahead, we will face it together." Zhen Rim sighed softly as he picked at his hair. "I can finally get rid of these shadows of the past." Xueqi still had that expression full of wisdom, but her eyes were no longer empty, but full of a certain expectation and determination. Together, they stepped through the gates of the nameless world. Chapter 11, The Weave of Fate. Through that door, they entered not a concrete world, but a starry sky that seemed to be endless. Countless points of light twinkle around, as if each star represents an infinite possibility, and every choice creates a new line of destiny. This is the nameless world. The voice of the black-robed man came from all directions. He stood in front of Yoon-kiju, pointed to the starry sky in front of him and explained, each star represents a certain story and a certain fate. All your choices will affect the course of these stories. Yoon Seunju frowned. The scene in front of her made her extremely confused. It's not just a physical vastness, it's more like a labyrinth deep in the mind. She begins to understand that the world works far more than she understands, and that it's not just about rewriting the story, it's about taking control of fate itself. So, these stars. What does that mean? She asked. The black-robed man raised his hand, and a point of light in the starry sky suddenly zoomed in, reflecting a blurry image. In the image, she is herself, busy in the town's restaurant, and the town disappears behind her, turning to ashes. This is your fate in the past, Yoon Seunju. The black-robed man whispered, this is the path you should have taken. When you decide to leave that story, you also choose to abandon that fate. Yoon-kiju felt a shock in his heart. She didn't want to go back to the plot of the past, but she had to admit that her choice did change her original fate. She never imagined that she would stand at such a fork in the road, facing an unpredictable future. So, what now? She asked. A meaningful smile appeared in the black-robed man's eyes. Now, you will have the opportunity to choose a new destiny. These stars will guide you on the path to the future. But remember, every path is unique and can't be repeated. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 12. Back to the fragments of the past. At this moment, the points of light in the starry sky changed again. A star burst suddenly, and countless rays of light shot out in all directions, gradually condensing into a colorful shard. The fragments were broken into countless small pieces, gradually pieced together into an image of herself, standing in the former alchemy academy, surrounded by the three former villains. This is your past. The black-robed man whispered, that's your role in Rippling Sea, a member of the trio. You are no longer the villain who is forced by fate, but you have the right to choose. Yoon-kiju stared at this image, and his heart was full of mixed feelings. At one point, she wanted to change her role in that story, and she wanted to escape a fate full of challenges and blows. And now, she stood here, faced with a myriad of choices, still unsure which path she should take. What if I choose to go back to that story? She asked. The black-robed man didn't answer, but just waved his hand slightly, and the fragments began to melt, forming another image. It was a sight she had never seen before, a majestic castle standing on a barren land, surrounded by snow and ice. The gates of the castle slowly opened, and a figure stepped out of it, which was her future. It's a whole new destiny. The black-robed man said, whatever you choose, this will be the beginning of your future. Yoon-kiju took a deep breath and looked at the gate of the castle. She knew that this was her choice, and she had to bear all the consequences. I choose, she whispered, to the castle. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 13. The Re-interweaving of Fates. With her choice, the starry sky of the nameless world begins to blur. What had once been countless points of light was now shrouded in a layer of mist, and the gates of the castle slowly unfolded in front of her. She knew that, no matter what, this moment would be the ultimate turning point in her fate. The moment she stepped through the gate, the light in the starry sky dissipated again, and the world fell silent. She will enter a whole new world and rewrite her story. However, she also understands that this is not the end, but a new beginning. Her fate will once again be intertwined with this world. Chapter 14. The Final Chapter of Fate. Yoon-kiju walked into the gate of the castle, and there was silence all around, as if the whole world had stood still. The castle is magnificent and ancient, carved with countless intricate symbols and patterns, and every piece of masonry on the wall seems to hold some kind of hidden secret. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the silent space, but the silence made her feel extremely lonely. She took a deep breath, her heart intertwined with fear and anticipation for the future. No matter how she chooses, whether it's going back in time or moving on, the door has been opened and there is no going back. She walked down the long hallway, the light and shadow distorting along the way, as if with each step, the world around her changed. Each of her choices seems to be silently determining the direction of the future. Just as she was about to reach the deepest part of the castle, suddenly, a familiar voice sounded. You're finally here. Yoon-kiju stopped and turned to look. The figure appeared in her sight like a ghost. It's a sage. However, this time she is not the confident and brave girl she is familiar with. Her eyes were full of pain and confusion, and there were some tears on her face. Yoon Kijua felt an inexplicable chill hit her, and there was a vague uneasy premonition in her heart. What's wrong? Yoon Kijua walked up to her and asked with concern. Xueqi raised his head and smiled bitterly. I used to think that we could free ourselves from the shadows of the past and live more freely. But now, I find that no matter how much we change our fate, we will never be able to shake off those invisible shackles. You mean? Yoon Seunjo's heart beat faster. None of this was our choice. Xueqi nodded. Our choice may just be another interpretation of fate. The nameless world we live in is not something we can fully control. The fate of each character has long been woven into this huge web, and we are just pawns forced to beat. Yoon Kijua took a deep breath and looked at Xueqi in disbelief. She doesn't want to believe in herself and these former villains, and no matter how hard she tries, she can't get rid of the shackles of fate. So, what are we going to do? She asked, a glimmer of pain in her eyes. He smiled slightly. We can't escape, but we can choose how to face it. Her words made Yoon Kijua feel a glimmer of hope, and she finally understood something. Perhaps, fate is never simply right and wrong, black and white, but the process of everyone struggling and resisting in it. If all this is a trick of fate, then we will no longer give in. Yoon Seunjo's tone became firm, and his gaze became sharper. What we need to do is not to escape, but to recreate our own destiny. Chapter 15, The Choice of Fate. A hint of surprise flashed in her eyes, and then she nodded slightly, as if she had found the courage she had not lost for a long time. You're right. She took a deep breath. If we can't get rid of the past, then let the past and the future be intertwined, and let us be the masters of our own destiny. Yoon Kijua smiled and looked at the giant gate that was gradually appearing in front of him. That door, once the entrance to the nameless world, now represents infinite possibilities. And her choice is no longer to let fate pull her, but to take the initiative to write the future. She took a deep breath and stepped out of the door, leading her into the unknown future. Chapter 16, A Chapter of Rebirth. As they passed through the giant gate, the sight before them became more real and concrete. They have arrived at a new world, a world that has never been written, full of endless possibilities. We've come to a new world. Yoon Kijua whispered. Yes. But it's not an isolated world, it's connected to all possibilities. Yoon Seunjo looked deeply at this vast and boundless world, and felt a strong power in his heart. She knows that at this moment, she and her former character are no longer pawns of fate, but creators. No matter what the future holds, they will no longer be bound and will write their own stories in their own way. The ending of the story is no longer fate, but a chapter intertwined with every choice. Yoon Seunjo is no longer the vicious female partner of the past, but a woman who truly controls her own destiny. Her destiny, like that starry sky, is boundless and full of infinite possibilities. Epilogue, the final chapter of destiny and the beginning of a new chapter. Yoon Kijua looked back at Xueqi behind him, and his heart was full of incomparable firmness. This journey from the nameless world to the real world is not just a battle for her alone, but a path she has walked with all the souls she has ever lost. The shadow of the past no longer binds her, and the confusion of the future no longer fears her. She smiled and embarked on a new journey. No matter how bumpy the road was, no matter how vast the starry sky ahead, she would never wander again. Her destiny will be created by herself.